Hello guys, and today I will be reading Mr. Ferris and His Wheel. It's written by Catherine Gibbs Davis, illustrated by Gilbert Ford. Let's go into the book. It was only 10 months until the World's Fair, but everyone was still talking about the star attraction of the last World's Fair. At 81 stories, France's Eiffel Tower was the tallest building. Its pointing iron and air towers soaring so high that visitors to the top could see Paris in one breathtaking sweep. Completed in 1881, the Eiffel Tower stood at 986 feet, surpassing America's Washington Monument to become the world's tallest man-made structure. It was America's turn to impress the world at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. But what could outshine the famous French Tower? And who would build it? A nationwide contest was announced. Before TV and the internet, people from around the globe gathered at the World Fair to share their different ways of life, new technologies, tasty inventions such as hamburgers and Cracker Jacks first appeared. So this is about an overlook of the page. As you can see, this man is holding up a Chicago Fair contest board. Let's move on to the next page. Contest drawing poured in from around the country, but most of the plans looked like the Eiffel Tower was only bigger. The fair judges said no to every last one. Was this really the best that American engineers could muster? To an ambitious young civil engineer, this contest was more than a dare. It was a matter of a national pride. George Washington Gill Ferris Jr. had already designed some of the country's biggest bridges, tunnels, and roads. He could never allow a French tower to overshadow America's World's Fair. Why hadn't the United States built the world's first skyscraper? George had seen the elegant steel frame rise 10 stories high with his own eyes. So, supporting a metal frame instead of a solid wall, Chicago's home insurance building was the world's first skyscraper. Bird cages were the inspiration for the metal frame. So I will show you the page. So this says the judge says no, and here's the tower that they were talking about. Here's the fact that I was reading. Let's go on to the next page. George had an idea for a structure that would dazzle and move, not just stand like the Eiffel Tower. Back at his drawing boards in Pittsburgh, he and his engineering partner, William Granu, measured and remeasured. A mistake of an inch could bring their invention crashing down. So this is a page, and this I think would be George, and this would be his partner sitting there, and all their stuff. And here's a drawing, and they're going to invent something that is already invented, and because of them, so Ferris wheel thing happened. Okay, so let's see what happens. George arrived in Chicago and made his case to construction chief of the fair. The chief stared at George's drawings. No one had ever created a fair attraction that huge and complicated. The chief told George that his structure was so flimsy it would collapse. George had heard enough. He rolled up his drawings and said, "You're an architect, sir. I'm an engineer." George knew something that the chief did not. His invention would be delicate looking and strong. It would be both strong and lighter than the Eiffel Tower because it was built with an amazing new metal or steel. George was a steel expert, and his structure would be made of steel alloy. Alloys combine a super strong mix of hard metal with two or more chemical elements. So this is a picture, and this chief, and he's like, "This is way too hard," but he's like, "No, you're an architect and I'm an engineer, so you gotta do my job." And this is all his papers, and this is drawing that he made. Drawings that the architect is holding. The judge could not decide. Fall turned to winter as the dilly dallied. In only 4 months, the fair would open, and it still had no star attraction. Finally, desperate, they agreed to George's far-fetched idea, a try. But they would not give him 1 penny for the material to build it. The clock was ticking. George dashed from bank to bank asking for help, but when he began describing his invention, the lenders laughed him into the streets. So George used his own savings and convinced a few wealthy investors to join him. Still short of money, he boldly went ahead and ordered the parts he needed from a dozen different steel mills. So basically, this is strip. You went from over here, you went from over here, you went all around them searching for people, and everybody just laughed at him. But then finally, he got the money that he needed and did everything that he could. His goal might be achieved. Let's move on to the next page. In January 1893, George's construction crew began work on the foundation. Shovels broke as the workers tried digging into the frozen ground. It was one of the most brutally cold winters in Chicago history. Blast! George ordered his crew to dynamite the icy earth, but what they found underneath it was scarier still. Quicksand. The deadly muck and suck men or machine under in seconds. So, like, the ice, and it was winter, so they blew up like dynamite, and then turned out to be quicksand, so they all like quicksand is really dangerous. So this stage, this is the blast that happened when everyone's here. So, and George and his brave workers kept frantically digging. Finally, 35 feet down, he hit solid ground. They planted 2 huge steel towers into the earth, bolted them to crossbars of steel, and poured in the cement to hold it all in place. Then they carefully lowered a 70-ton. You know, like a wheel's like 15 tons, and it weighs 70. So like about 4 times, or five or 6 times as much as a whale. So that's a lot. With fittings, the weight of the module locomotive train between them. This sturdy structure would hold a gigantic invention, steady in even the strongest Chicago winds. As time grew shorter, freight trains from all around the country chugged into the fairgrounds, loaded with more than 100,000 parts. So like 200,000, like maybe even 1,000,000 parts, because he's inventing such a big invention. And workers hurried to fit all the pieces together like a giant Lego breathless race to finish. Responsible for a wheel, many structural details, George's partner was losing hope. It's undignified. Stand back, dear. It might collapse. Betcha the wind will blow the Ferris fully into the lake. Nope, it's fall first. It's going up too fast. They say Ferris has wheels in his head. So they all are thinking like bad at this idea, like trash. And by the way, there's a page. And there's another thing. It's a quote by William Gronow. Frequently, I was discouraged and ready to give up. But through the encouragement of Mr. Ferris, work was always resumed. So, this is just the overall of that page. Let's go on to the next page. Finally, with only 2 months left, the last section was bolted into place. And there stood a perfect, enormous circle, 834 in the circumference, rising 265 feet above the ground and designed to move with precision of the smallest watch. It looked exactly how George had first imagined it back as a boy on his ranch in Nevada. Living near a shore of Nevada Carson River, George had often watched around the water wheel turn around and around. Many times he had imagined shrinking to the size of one of his toy soldiers and hitching a ride up and way in one of his wooden buckets. And this is the page. That's how it looked. Doesn't this seem familiar? It's a Ferris wheel. So this is a true story about Mr. Ferris and his partner building the first ever Ferris wheel. Looks amazing. And yep, we're going on to the next page. Still, the biggest test was yet to come. The monster wheel had to spin. And George's elegant passenger car had still had to be hung. The tireless crew worked day and night to attach them. Each was the size of a living room, with an enormous pictures, windows, and 40 velvet seats. George's wheel worked like a bicycle wheel. Both are supported by skinny, flexible rods called spokes. As wheel turns, the spokes work together to share weight. These are called tension wheels. On June 21st, 1893, the opening day finally arrived. 2,000 people gathered as flags waved. George took the stage and dedicated his wheel to the noble profession of engineering. Then George's wife presented him with a beautiful golden whistle. George and his wife stepped proudly into car number 1, followed by their nervous but excited guests. Uniformed guards closed and locked the doors. Would the wheel work? George blew the golden whistle. 2,000 tons of steel began to turn around as soft clanking of the large chain drove the mighty machine up, up, up. The car quietly floated above the mud and noise. 2 steam engines and an extra one in case one broke down made the wheel turn. George had hidden them under the wooden platform where the riders boarded. So this is the picture. And his golden whistle that his wife gave him in the Ferris wheel. Just made that for him. And he'll tell us about his death and everything. So let's go on to the next page. As the car was lifted higher, everyone rose from the velvet seats and crowded the windows, spread out below the dizzying sweep of the fairgrounds. The city of Chicago was and sparkling Lake Michigan, and even glimpse of a 3 far away states. Below, more cars were loaded, and after the people had gone 2 times around and had 20 glorious airborne minutes in motion, the powerful brakes brought the wheel to a whisper soft stop. When the conductor called all out, everyone begged to go around again. The wheel is safe. The news raced around the fairgrounds to the city of Chicago and across the country. So this is a picture of the Ferris wheel loading out and below. All summer, visitors from all around the world traveled to Chicago World's Fair. It didn't matter whether one was a senator, a farmer, boy, or girl. Everyone wanted to take a spin on the magnificent wheel. Adventurous couples asked to get married on it. On hot, steamy days, the wheel was the perfect place to escape up, up, up into the cooling breeze. All you would all you needed was 50 cents. What you really need right now is like $10, but 50 cents back then was a lot. During the 19 weeks the wheel was in operation, 1.5 million passengers rode it. It revolved more than 10,000 times, withstood gale force winds and storms, and did not need one repair. That's an amazing wheel. At night, George's Ferris wheel became a magical glowing circle with 3,000 electric light bulbs, another brand new invention. As the Queen of Midway made its stately rotation, so did the seasons. Soon a fall and chilled air, and the visitors began to thin out. In late 1800s, homes were still lit with candles and kerosene lamps. The Chicago World's Fair helped reassure people that electricity was safe, because they thought it's gonna shock us, it's gonna do this to us, it's gonna do that to us. But now, and it proved that electricity is safe. At night, farmers and sailors from as far away as 40 miles could see the wheel's spectacular blaze of light. This picture of it. October 26, 1893, just before midnight, the immense twinkling spinning circle slowed to its final stop. The Chicago World Fair was over. George had called his creation a monster wheel, but his inventors renamed it after his inventor, the Ferris wheel, as we know today. The Chicago Fair, or the White City, inspired two more magical places: the Emerald City in the classic children's book The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, and Disneyland. Walt Disney's father was a construction worker on the fair. He told his son stories about dreamlike city he had helped build, and young Walt grew up to build famous amusement park that stay open all year round. If it was cold, if it was dark, if it was any weather in the whole world, it would stay all year long. Visitors returned to their homes to tell the story of the world's greatest ride. And before long, copies of the Ferris wheel began popping up all around the world. In 1894, the next Ferris wheel appeared in California on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Lit up at night, and it was the first landmark seen by ships finding their way home. Today, at the Ferris wheels, our most familiar and beloved carnival ride at state fairs and amusement parks. A ride on one still feels like flying to the moon. And ooh, the view. So people really love the view of things. Since 1893, there have been several tallest ever Ferris wheels, and the race continues with proposed new records holding the world's tallest, including the New York wheel, 630 feet, and the Dubai Eye at 690 feet. And that is the end of the book. And if you want to see a picture of him, the man who invented it, Mr. Ferris, he's a very great man. He's right over here. That's Mr. Ferris. Let me show it a little bit closer for y'all. And that was Mr. Ferris. And his wheel and everything that he made. And websites that you can learn about him are Chicago Hyde Park Historical Society page, the history of the theme park inventions, Internet Fairground history. And we are done with this book. See you next time. Bye.